Welcome back to the Corrective Culture podcast. Today we had a milestone again. It's milestone after milestone, isn't it? Angie Chek.
Yeah, Angie Chek. Angie's an amazing woman. She's the head of the HLC department of the Chek Institute, Paul's wife, and shamanic healing, geometry healing. We always tend to speak about death a little bit, don't we? Yeah. Speak about the dying process and spirits and what happens after you die and what else?
Touched a little bit on tarot, soul retrieval, and what she's into. Yeah, went deep into biogeometry, which is cool. Not super deep, but like that's where her passion is really going at the moment. So that was awesome. It was a good podcast. I fucking enjoyed it, and I was actually fairly nervous. I don't know why for this one.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't think we touched on tarot, did we?
A little bit at the start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We didn't really touch on it, but we talked about it for a second. But anyway, yeah. I'm still nervous.
Yeah,
so fucking
cool.
Tune in.
Yeah, tune in.
Everybody, welcome back to the Corrective Culture podcast. Today we have a huge one, Angie Chek. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, it's
nice to be here.
It's so cool. It's crazy that from watching you for the years and now you're sitting right in front of us and really it's from the Chek Institute's teachings that we've sort of done all this and brought it into reality over here in Australia. So I've got to say thanks for that.
Yeah,
right on.
Absolutely.
Really
and I don't think sometimes people understand how much like the Chek Institute personally for us and going through all you guys is like actually given us a full life down here.
Yeah.
Like we make a good living and we're helping people, and I'm just like, we just want to like spread that to as many people. So super grateful and thankful for that and the Chek Institute. So appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. You know, if people apply the principles, you can work and make an amazing living. I do too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so simple, you know, like it's simplicity and the complexity. And it's like,
right.
I can't believe like the amount of times you've just told someone to get off tap water and then you just like get into some good water and it changes their whole life, you know?
Yeah, it was because I've mentioned before how like Jake first introduced me to say Paul's work years ago when I didn't have a clue. He sent me it was a Facebook share actually. It was a video on Facebook, right? And that opened me up to this whole world of like who's Alan Watts, who's Abraham Hicks, who's Paul, who's Ram, like this whole stuff I had no idea of a young man. Like I actually went to prison years ago. So I was not that fresh out, like pretty fresh out, a couple of years out, I think. And there was no intro into any way of that life. And then we just got hooked, you know, we got so hooked. And now it feels like, what's it feel like? It feels like we're playing a big game now but it's fun. Yeah. Instead of like, I didn't know what I was doing before, you know, but now I have a lot of direction and we know what we're doing. And it just feels like it's just happening so easily.
I think that's the thing with the Chek holistic stuff, especially is like, and I know you teach it, like you teach 1, 2, and 3 or just 2 and 3 or?
Yeah, all of them, 1, 2, and 3, yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to do my 3. I want to come over and do 3 with you. So that's the plan.
Right on.
So how did you get into this stuff? Like, I know it's probably a long time ago that you got into it, but like, what led you into this?
Sure.
Like,
yeah, so back in the day, I mean, it all started. If you fast forward to, or I guess rewind to when I was in college, graduated, took my first job. I was working with my biology degree, working for a product pet food, cat food company, doing research and development. And I started having problems with my blood sugar, and I started to have, problems with my brain, I thought, because I couldn't think straight, but it was all blood sugar issues, eating crappy food. So I started learning how to eat right and exercise, which kind of took me on my journey, became a nutritionist, became a personal trainer, and quit my job at the research company. And then when my first year of being a trainer, it said, well, you have to do continuing education credits. And I was like, oh, okay. So they sent me this magazine, and lo and behold, I would think it was scientific core training was in there. I'm like, well, everybody wants a 6-pack abs, you know? So I'm like, I'll take the course. And it just changed the way I taught, and my success with my clients was so much better. And I was like, well, this is awesome. So every year I started taking his, what do you call it, homeschooling courses.
Yeah.
And I took one after another. The next one was scientific shoulder training. And everybody's like, where do you learn this stuff? And back then, it was so funny. I didn't want to tell anybody. Like Paul Chek was like, weapon.
Yeah.
And so I like my back pocket. I'm like, oh, whatever. And I didn't want them to learn it because I didn't want any competition, because there was
Yeah.
literally no competition when you learn this stuff.
Fully.
And so my business just skyrocketed. And so that's how I got into it. And so long story short, I ended up doing all his, home courses. And I finally thought, okay, well, now I have to actually take a live course. And I was so busy, and I didn't have time for that. So I made the time. And when I took one of his his inline courses, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I wait so long? Because you think you know everything when you hear Paul on YouTube or on his podcast, or with even taking his, courses you can get by mail. But there's so much more in the live courses. And I was like blown away. And so when I started taking the courses, I just thought, I'm going to teach this stuff one day.
Wow.
And so that's how it kind of happened. It was just like, I'm going to do this. And it just changed my life, just like it changed yours. And
Yeah.
my whole passion was, I was a sick child and I wanted to learn about being healthy. And so I was always trying to find out the right way to eat. And there were so many stupid diets out there. Everything I tried, oh, this must be the way. Oh, I got sicker. Oh, this must be the way. I got fatter. Oh, this must be the way. And so there was all these extremes. And I'm like, I just need to know the truth. And so it led me to Paul. And when you finally learn the right way, you're like, oh, thank you. Finally, there's information that makes sense and my body enjoys and I'm healthy.
God,
and so that's kind of how.
That's the best thing. Hey, I had the exact same experience with that. Like, I honestly did. I remember I was in Hawaii and I was surfing at the time, and this like kind of hot younger girl called me, like, she's like, oh, you put on some weight, like you've got like love handles over your hips. and I was like it just got to my core being. I was just like, oh my God, like I'm fat. Like what happened? Like I'm supposed to be an athlete. This is ridiculous. And I was so confused. For 2 years, just went down that rabbit hole, like you said then, like what's good, what's not. And then I finally saw Donald Carr, and he was like, just get as much good quality organic meat as you can and eat it. And I ended up losing a lot of weight. And I was like, I could just relax for the first time. It's like for the first time in your life, you're like, there's no fads. It's like, this is the truth.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Incredible. Hey. And so,
yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say all those fad diets, it's like you yo-yo too, you get skinny, but then you stop and you get fatter. And then you go back on harder and you push yourself harder. And it's like, wait a minute, and you're like forcing your body to look a certain way. And I'm like, this can't be the answer,
Can't be sustainable.
It isn't. And so finally I was like, oh, this makes sense. My body loves it. My body's healthy year round. I don't have to do some diet to get myself in shape for a photo shoot or whatever I used to do back then. It's great. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's what was the sort of diets you were getting into back then? Like, do you remember like one that sort of stands out that you tried?
Oh, sure. So back then, I was into bodybuilding. So my story goes that I won this bodybuilding competition. And so I hired a trainer. He put me on this diet, and then you start learning. I won the competition out of 30,000 people. It was the Muscle Tech Transformation Competition. And then you're surrounded by all these bodybuilders. So it was really confusing to me because I was like, wait, I got in shape because I was unhealthy, right? So then I got into shape and I became healthy. And then you're around bodybuilders who are getting themselves in shape in the unhealthy way. So it's like the other side of the spectrum. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And, they're on the side, oh, just take some drugs or take all these steroids. Like, what? No, absolutely not. I was the sick kid and now I'm the healthy kid and I don't want to be sick again. So that was this, yo-yo thing. So I tried everything, protein powders, egg whites. Oh, back then I would egg whites in the microwave. And then I'm like, why do I have this stinky gas in the afternoon? Huh. Weird. And then I was just like so extremes, like high protein, low carb, just mostly that kind of stuff where it was just, supplements, lots of supplements, hundreds of dollars of supplements. And, that was such an extreme thing. So I was just pounding pills and, I tried everything. My mom was like, why are you doing all this? I even was like thinking margarine back then was better. So I was eating margarine because you stay away from fat, and all these stupid things, chicken breasts instead of chicken thighs, I did it all.
Yeah. I actually remember when I first got into fitness, I told mum I was getting like 7 eggs. And I was like, we got to chuck all the yolks out. I can only eat the whites. I don't even know why I was saying that. I must have read that somewhere then. Did the yolks have fat in it or something? I don't know what it was.
No, yeah, the yolks have fat and the egg white has protein. So we're like, oh, protein. But then lo and behold, you learn from Paul later that you need the fat to break down the protein.
Yeah.
So that's why I would have gas, because it's like, well, there's no fat here, so your body can't break this down.
Yeah,
And
right.
so you
Yeah.
need the fat. That's why when you look at a steak, there's marbling of the meat, because that marbling helps you break it down. So if you extract it, it's not natural, and then your body doesn't digest it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's pretty true. Eh? Like even my dog won't eat super lean meat, hey?
Mm.
Because we had a hunter on and he goes, you can't eat rabbits, you die. Like rabbit starvation. So he goes, like if you just keep eating rabbits, you'll end up dying because there's not enough fat in them. And
Right.
even Honey, like if I give her like lean deer and that, she's like, she'll have it once, but the next day she's like, doesn't want it twice. Needs like that fatty sort of cut
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, like what Paul does, he takes a big chunk of butter and just throws it on top of his rabbit, and then you have enough fat.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah, true. He eats rabbit. I don't think
Yeah.
I've tried rabbit. Hey, it's not really on the menu over here.
It tastes like chicken.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love me
I
some
wouldn't have
rabbit.
thought that.
Yeah. So, like blood sugar regulation, you said you had, like, once you got your blood sugar stabilized out, you could think clearer. What did that look like for you? Because we just had a chick on who was really into that. I'd love to know your experience with that.
Well, for me, I was hypoglycemic, and
Okay.
so that's borderline diabetic.
Yeah.
And so I'd be at work, and all of a sudden I'd be like, I can't form a sentence. I can't remember my thoughts. And I started to panic, and my heart would race and be like, oh my gosh, what's going on with me? That's my microphone here. And and so I thought it was my brain. I thought I have a brain tumor. I just thought, because I can't make sentences, there's got to be something wrong with my brain. So I went to a doctor and I said, this is happening to me. And he kind of figured it out before I didn't know. I was just a young kid back then. And he's like, okay, come back in. We're going to do a 5-hour glucose tolerance test. And so basically you eat the night before, you don't eat any breakfast, you show up at your doctor's appointment, and you drink 100 grams of sugar. So it's like a big thing of sugar, water.
Wow.
Drink that down. And what they do is they test your blood before you do that. And then they test it every hour on the hour. And they
Wow.
just check to see what your blood's doing. And so by the 4th hour, I'm going like dark spots, when your eyes just fade and you feel like you're
Yeah.
going to pass. And I was sweating and I was just kind of shaking. And the nurse
Wow.
kept saying, don't pass out, don't pass out. I'm like, no, I won't. But every bit of me was trying to stay awake for this test. I was like
Wow.
this. And then so the 5 hours was up and they said, okay, go ahead and eat real quick. And so I started eating and I thought, oh, I'll just go to work after this. I was so sick. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going back home. And I was just nauseous, fatigued. And so the doctor told me my results. So like a week later, he's like, you're borderline diabetic. He goes, if you
Wow.
would have passed out, that's a positive test. You came this close to passing out. So you would have been a diabetic. He goes, if you don't watch what you're eating and start exercising, in 5 years, you will be a diabetic. And that was my wake up call, because I was
Holy
like,
shit.
yeah. And it was a big thing for me, because I remember as a kid, I lived in this little neighborhood, and on the top of the hill, one of our best friends, he had a grandmother that lived with them, and she had diabetes. And she was super sick. She was in a wheelchair. And we watched her. They had to cut one toe off at a time, then the next toe, and the next toe, then the foot.
Oh,
And we
that would have been
watched her as a
traumatic.
child. Yeah, I was like, what? And then they cut her foot all the way up to her knee, both legs up to her knee. And so I saw this was back then when diabetes wasn't very well regulated. I always saw that. And so when they said diabetes, that's the disease I saw. That I'm like, I'm never going to have
Yeah.
diabetes. No way. What can I do to change this? And so I just got proactive and started learning how to take care of myself. And the rest is history.
Well, lucky you didn't go
That's-
to a average doctor because he probably would have told you it was the eggs.
Well, well, an average doctor would have been like, here's some metformin and have a nice, and so he actually was a regular doctor, but he was a younger doctor and he just knew. And he's like,
Cool.
he looked at me and says, you need to eat right and exercise.
Yeah.
And that was the best
great.
advice ever.
Fully,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
golden,
yeah.
eh?
That's the best advice ever,
Someone
eh?
looking after you there.
Right.
It's
So
funny.
that I was like, yeah. And that doesn't happen these days,
No.
Doctors just like, take a small dosage. It's just a micro dosage. It's not going to hurt you. You'll feel so much better. Carry on, without telling them anything about their lifestyle factors. So I'm blessed that doctor said that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's getting better or worse in the medical system in regards to this sort of stuff?
In some ways, I think better. I'd like to always say things are getting better. There's
Yeah.
a lot more doctors coming out. Like my mom, she's in her 70s and she just got some new doctors and they're much more with it than her previous doctors.
Okay.
Like her previous doctors were in their 60s and they were always combative with me. Like, oh, if you're so smart, then why doesn't your mom just see you? Instead of working with me, they were
Yeah.
like thinking I was me. Well, no, we don't do that here. We don't. And her new doctors are way more proactive. In fact, I love it because the recent doctors, like my mom wasn't getting the COVID vaccine, but some of her friends were. And the newest doctor said, we don't do that anymore to her friends. And they're like, oh, okay. So I thought, oh, thank goodness
That's
someone's
good.
starting
Stepping up.
wisen up.
Yeah.
But in
wow.
other areas, we see the medical field still needing help. It's just there's a lot of doctors that still are pro-vaccine and pro drugs and don't take care of yourself, just keep on taking drugs.
Yeah.
So we see both.
It's amazing. Like I've always known about it, but I watched the Callie Means and Casey Means podcast and Joe Rogan recently. I'm not sure if you've heard of those two.
I have.
Oh, you
Yes.
have, yeah. Well, I didn't know.
I
about
haven't.
it.
I haven't listened to it. Yeah.
Oh, well, it was one of the most, and they're on Tucker Carlson, but it was one of the most amazing podcasts I've ever seen. And it really opened my eyes up, like a really statistic based, Paul spoke about it for years, but someone that's in it, from Stanford, they're like, oh, this is why we thought what we thought. And it's because they funded all our studies. And then when I thought otherwise, they told me, no, it's this, and this. So he goes, it's all just money from big food, and everyone's looking out for each other, and they think you can't just change it because it makes it all fall apart. But it was a really good idea of like, oh shit, like this is how I thought about it, right? The other day, because you can get medical marijuana here, I called up the medical marijuana doctor, and his job is basically a secretary. This guy, he just calls up, what do you got? Back pain? Sweet, I'll give you this, So I thought about it. I was like, man, this guy's gone to uni for however many years, and this is now what he's doing full time. But since he's got a doctor to his name, a lot of people will put a respect to whatever he says, when really all day long he's sitting there calling up people saying, what weed you got, Like, what's your problem,
Yeah.
And I remember I asked, I was like, do you guys have any organic sort of strains, like something that's not sprayed? And he's like, oh, it's all TGA approved, like whatever it is, it's which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration here. He goes, it's all safe. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh God, like I got to manifest some good stuff, But that's a similar sort of concept, right?
You can see it's like it's getting better, but it's not perfect yet. It's like, okay, we know medical marijuana is good, but they're not looking at actually the organic qualities, or if it's grown indoors or outdoors, or with hydroponic or with lights, all those things that can affect medicine.
Oh, it's crazy. I smoked some of my friends and it made my vision worse. I was like,
Wow.
just while I was on it, and it went back to normal, but I was freaking out. I was like, what the hell is it? I've never noticed a change in my vision yet, And I was like, is my vision changing? And I was getting my friends to look at the same thing, see if they can read it. And then I realized it was just the stuff we smoked. So whatever the hell they put on that for it to do that, I don't know, but that was the last time.
Yeah. Right.
So with the HLC coaching you've gotten into now, is that your sort of number one passion at the moment? Is that what lights your soul up the most, or what lights your soul up the most?
Oh yeah, so I do love teaching. I've been teaching almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So I do love it, but I also have other pursuits. So I enjoy doing that. I do about 6 classes a year.
Yep.
But my personal coaching is my favorite thing to do, where I work with clients one-to-one.
Cool.
I do things like biogeometry. I do shamanic work, where I do soul retrievals, past life regressions, those sort of things. So
Yes.
I love that work as well, and that's kind of got my attention right now. And
Yeah. How did you get into that? Like
Yeah.
that, how did it go from like being in the fitness to fitness, and then like feeling a deep calling into like shamanic healing and biogeometry and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of writing a book. It's actually turned into 4 books. And so I was desperately trying to get them out last year, and then I was just like, there's so much content. It's like my baby. I've been writing this book for over 12 years now.
Wow.
And so I don't want to just put it out. I'm like, okay, it's been this long. I'm just going to wait till it's absolutely perfect in my mind.
Yeah.
And so it tells my stories about me growing up and having some abilities. And my parents were very Catholic and were kind of like, oh, that's the devil's work. Don't do that, or don't say that. And so I kind of like just downregulate some of the things I did as a child. And it wasn't until I was like a teenager, when you're kind of defiant and you're like, I'm going to play with tarot cards. I want to play with the Ouija board. I'm going to do these things. And, I kind of started learning about these things. So it's always like a passion about spirit and subtle things that are beyond our regular eyes. And so that was kind of my path so when I was, graduated from college, I got married. I was married to a man before Paul. And that's when we didn't want kids. So I was just kind of working on me. And I started well, I'm going to start diving more into this. So I started taking Paul's courses, and then I thought, well, what else am I interested in? So I went to a mystery school, and that was really a great thing. There's probably several mystery schools out there as well. They're just a really great way to figure out the mysteries of life and
Cool.
who you are. And it just gave me a sense of purpose of who I am. Like you get down, when you get to really work at that level, you really figure out why you're on the planet. And that helped me figure out who I was. And then I'm like, yeah, this is part of me. So went into energy medicine, and then I did advanced shamanic training. I did the 3-year advanced training with Michael Harner School.
Cool.
It just kind of was following the road. So my book is all about my path and the crazy stories that happened to me along the way. And it's kind of like the fool in tarot. Didn't really know. It's just like, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah.
And then all these fun things would happen. I'm like, oh, cool. And then later you realize, wow, that was pretty amazing. Like, and you could see all these things transpire into who I am today. So it just kind of followed it. When a book fell in your lap, I'd read it, and go, oh, what's this? Oh, I'll take that course. Oh, that led me to this one. And there was even experiences where I'd find a teacher that I didn't like. And if the teacher said, I went to this or something, and I didn't like it, if I didn't like the teacher, I'm like, I'm going to that.
Yeah.
Whatever this teacher didn't like. So sometimes even bad teachers led me on my path, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this. So
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's sick. That's the way I like to do it. Like not sometimes I do. I sometimes struggle to just sit there and like, all right, I'm going to study this for 2 hours. But if I can just walk up to the book and say, teach me something, and then open it, it's just doesn't seem as stressful for some reason on my psyche, my fast psyche.
Hey, it's more fun.
And I get
Paul
some
does that all the
gold.
time. Yeah, that's it. Paul does that all the time. He's like, you don't have time to read the whole book. Just ask your soul what pages you need to read.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And so he does that every day, and just reads the highlights and then puts the book away, which is really great.
With
So
regards to your intro into whether it's shamanism or spirituality, was there a moment where you first tapped in, like a moment during a meditation or drumming or whatever it was, where you first maybe entered another area, or whether that's in the mind or whatever it was, where it was just a big moment where you realized, oh, I can do more of this. Like I can go into here again. Do you remember that?
There was several. I don't remember. Let's see what my first one. Because when I was a kid, I would tap in like that. So I couldn't say. So when I was a kid, one of the things I used to do was astral travel. That was my favorite thing to do. So I don't know how I knew how to do it, but it was just one of these things where my parents were divorced. So I lived with my mom. My brother lived with my dad. So I was kind of like a single, like an only child. And I would sometimes just be in my room, and I'm like, oh, I'm just bored. I'm just going to go somewhere. And I remember I just one day laid on my belly on my bed, and I put my hands like this, and I laid my legs straight out and crossed my ankles. And all of a sudden I just saw myself leave my body, and I started floating out, and I'm like, what's this? And it was so profound that I was like flying. And that was my dream as a kid. I wanted to fly. And I would like seeing myself above my neighborhood, and 2 houses down was my best friend. So I remember flying into her house and checking on what she was doing. And she was in the bathroom brushing her teeth. And I was like, wow. So then I came back, and I was like, I'm going to call her. So I called my friend. I'm like, what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now? She's like, I'm brushing my teeth. I'm like, I knew it. She's like, what's going on? That's
cool.
when I was that moment where I was like, I just saw you doing that. And I was, in my room, and I went to your house, and she was like, whatever, but that's where I started, and so that was one of the moments.
God, what even is that? Hey, like, like that is.
Yeah, it's just, and I don't know how as a child I knew, but a lot of the things I've learned later in life, I knew without knowing. Like when I was working with teachers, sometimes I remember when we were in a situation where a girl was kind of freaking out, and I just put my hands out and held the space, and my teacher was like, how did you know how to do that? I'm like, I don't know. I just intuitively knew what to do. And so that's it. And a lot of the work I'm doing, when I hear it from a teacher, it was like remembering, not learning. And so obviously in a past life, I have done this many times before. So a lot of the work is just remembering. And as a child, when you go into no mind, you remember those things. And I just started doing it. And so when people ask, well, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. But I just did. I just remember just getting into the space of no mind and just seeing myself move out, and then seeing without seeing.
Is that how you do like soul recovery and stuff like that? So do you just like, you go into a state of no mind, and you can feel and connect with their soul and see actually what's going on there?
Yeah. So yeah. So when I do a soul retrieval, I even do them remotely. That's
Yeah.
where the number one way is remotely through
Cool.
Zoom. And if you were my client, I would have you be relaxed, laying on the ground or on a bed or a sofa. And I would get you into a relaxed state. So I would do a body relaxation thing, and then I'd put you into a kind of like a trance-like state. And
Cool.
then we go back and they give me a list of the times they want to visit. And so I tell them, don't tell me all the details, just tell me something that will remind you. So when you were 5 and your dad hit you, and then when they'd go, remember that time, they go, okay. And we'd go back together. So I'm looking with them.
Ah,
And so we go back and see if there's soul loss there. And so we go back, we say, see yourself there, look around. Do you see yourself outside your body? Do you see something? And so we collect those parts of them that are no longer in their body, that were stuck there.
makes a lot of sense.
And when you go back to that moment in time, and they, I guess, in a sense, are reliving it, is there dialogue of witnessing it and working through it, or how does that work? Like the next step?
Yeah. Yeah. So the next step would be you would say, if we find something that we need to bring back, we would have a conversation with that part of you, because there's a reason why that part of you left your body. Maybe it was scared, maybe it was upset, maybe thought it was going to die. So many reasons why. So if you're, and and I'll kind of backstep, when your body dies, so there's two ways of usually, and actually there's three, but there's two main ways of when you die. Either when your body and your soul knows it's dying, your soul will leave the body, and then the body goes through the death process. Or the other way is your soul doesn't want to leave the body, and your soul's fighting for your body to stay alive, and the body finally gives up, and then the soul has to, it like shoots out of the body because it says, well, the body is now dead. So there's those two things. So sometimes in soul retrievals are times when the soul got scared, says, oh, they're dying, and it didn't want to feel the impact of the car accident or something, so it shoots out of the body, and then they don't die. But then that part of them isn't recovered, so it's still
Ah.
outside of them.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's cool. I'm so interested to learn more about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and death in itself.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
in your opinion, what is like, what happens when you die?
So several things can happen when you die. And so, like I said, there's many ways to die, so you can, and the third way, the soul can actually wait inside the body. So the soul can wait for a while. Maybe it's waiting for someone to show up, just to say, and it'll linger in the body or in that earth plane. The soul can also visit relatives at that moment and kind of say goodbye before it passes on. And then it's up to the soul where it wants to go. And so with education, because if you don't have any knowledge of what happens when you die, you might not know what to do. Good thing is usually there's people from your ancestors will show up to be there for you, to help you. So oftentimes that's when I do really good work too, is when someone's on their deathbed, I can tell them how long they have to live, because I can feel the soul in the body, and based
Wow.
on where it's coming. Basically, if you had a body here and you were touching the feet, you could feel the soul slowly moving out the feet, up to the ankle,
Up to the
to
head.
the knee, and then finally out the crown of the head. And so you can gauge how fast that person is going to be gone. So it's like, oh, they got a few hours, they got a few days. But there's sometimes it gets stuck, and it's like, oh, they're working on something, and then it moves a little faster, and then it'll keep on going. And sometimes it's just clearing, and you're like, okay, it's ready, and it's just.
Wow.
And when that happens in their field, there will be usually ancestors. And that's when it got really juicy for me, because I was meditating all the time. This is when I was with my ex-husband, and he had a lot of relatives in their 80s and 90s. And so I got to see them on their deathbed. So about 6 relatives, where I saw them going through this transition. And that's when I was like, wow, I can see dead people. Like,
Wow.
what? People would show up, and I didn't know these people because they were 80, 90, so I didn't know their whole life history. So when they were dying, I would say, I'm seeing a vision. It's like an apparition, like you see them, but they're not intact, they're not solid. It's just like a ghost-like apparition. And I would describe them to my ex-husband. I'd be like, this person has their hair this way, or they're wearing this hat, or they're wearing these clothes. And he would know who they were because he knew the relatives. And he's like, oh, that's, the cousin, or that's her sister, or that's such and such. And he knew always who they were. I didn't know who they were, but I would describe them. That was confirmation that who I was seeing was valid, because he's like, oh, that's such and such.
Wow.
And so I would know. And so that what became fun for me. It's a lot of work though. When you connect to the dead, it's like you have to speed up, and they have to kind of slow down. And there's so meditation is the only way you really can get to your mind in that state, because you have to stay focused. Otherwise, it's too scrambled, and you're like, I can't get the message. And so when I do something like that, it was super exciting, but super exhausting. I'd finish and be like, oh, I just need to take a nap. Unlike when you do like energy medicine, when energy is running through you, it's like you're just like a battery and you're just got so much power. And so you could do energy healings all day long and you just be pumped. But you do one connection to the dead in one day and you're like, I'm so tired.
Do you feel like these things outside, like say these spirits, do they have any influence in your life? Do you know what I mean? More so like
I feel like I haven't answered all your questions. I'm saying, but yeah. So so first on your death, what happens when you die?
Oh, yeah.
So you have a choice, and they can take you. And usually there's two places you usually go: upper world or lower world. Upper world, we see it more as like angelic realm. It's kind of, for me, it's very like airy fairy kind of thing. But the lower world isn't hell. A lot of people are afraid, oh, lower world, that's hell and devil. But it's not. It's actually like jungle world. It's full of animals, lush gardens. And it's like, I'm like, when I die, I want to go to the lower world. That's amazing. And when you die, just because, let's say you choose to go up, in that direction, doesn't mean you have to stay there. It's kind of like if you were born in California, I can choose to visit Australia. I'm not stuck in California. So you don't have to say, this is my end all be all. I'm now here for the eternity. No, you can move on. You can come to the middle world. You can give guidance to your living ancestors. You can go to the lower world. You can travel. And it's quite fascinating because there's all these dimensions and different things there. There's places to study. You can reflect on your life and learn what you did and what you did not so well, what you could do better. You make soul contracts. You have rooms where you meet people and say, hey, I want to get pregnant in my next life. Will you be the father or whatever? You can make those connections. Or, hey, it's funny because we always think good connections. You could have connections that says, hey, I'm going to be an ass for the first 20 years of my life. I want you to come in and just punch the hell out of me when I'm 20 to wake me up. And they make a contract that you punch your best buddy. And then you're like, oh man, I feel so bad. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And you're beating yourself all your life and going, that was a contract you guys had and that was intended. So he would wake the hell up. So there's all sorts of contracts we make.
That makes a lot of sense. There's been times in my life where I'm like, that was so out of character for me. Why did that happen? Yeah, it's like even being with a person, like two girlfriends ago, I was like, why did I do that? It was so out of my character. I was like, but I needed it. I was meant to do it. I 100% know that. And it actually made me do a 180 in life. And it's like, that just makes so much sense, don't you reckon?
Yeah. There's such a good story Jake has with his one of his girlfriends where he's doing a really deep meditation. So good. He's doing a really deep meditation. Like you basically hit, what do you call it? Like,
well, I felt like the energy in my head, it was moving up and I could feel it for the first time in my life. It got to my neck and I felt like I was in the water in front of me. So I actually was as a part of the water and I felt like my neck was about to explode into everything. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And I started to had a little bit of fear come up and I was like, no, just stay there. And then I heard my girlfriend open my van door and was like, Jake, hurry the fuck up. just pulled me straight out of it.
Yeah, like, are you done yet or something? Or?
Are you friggin' done yet? I want to go. I was like, I'm with the wrong person.
That's such a good
You're right.
story.
You're all, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, there's so many questions and so many answers in there. So for these, say there's old ancestors around or spirits around, like, how, let's say people get into like devil worshipping, right? Say there's this crowd of people that get into things like that. For me, intuitively, when I think of, say, people trying to devil worship to do something bad to me, I think there's no way these people are going to have any influence over my life from whatever they're doing in their corner over there. There's no way they're going to control me, because people go down rabbit holes and, in the conspiracies and whatnot and see something happen and think this person created that or whatnot. So can there be negative influence on your life from things outside of yourself that aren't here or that are here but we can't see?
Yeah, that's why it's important to always stay in a high vibration. So like attracts like. So if you're in a negative mood, you can attract negative spirits. So if someone who's not mentally healthy and they're trying to dabble in these, pseudo, these spirit worlds, you'll see that they will attract negative entities because that's what their vibration is. And so if you keep your vibration high, you can't see the shadow and light. The darkness is always there, but you're in the light. So when you stay in that vibration, you don't have to worry about entities. So it's only when people, and the more you worry about them, the more you give them power, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
totally.
this could happen, this could happen. You give them power. So instead, I don't think about the negative entities. I know they're out there. I'm not focused on them. I stay in the light. I work with my good spirits and I do the work I do, and that's it. And not get egotistical. I never want to egg on and negative, because there's some nasty entities. And I've seen some, like I worked with one girl where I pulled out this, she had a possession and it was a crazy thing. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But that's not sort of stuff I want to work on. And it's like, get that out. And I don't want to fight with an entity. It's like, move it on and keep on going. It's like, I don't be like, I am stronger than you. Oh, hell no. That's just egging the negative world on. It's like, I would never ever do that. It's like, my house, clear it, send it on its way. I also wear my BioGeometry L90 pendant.
So good.
So that's so protective,
I've got that one. I bought it when I was at your house.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
So you always keep yourself protected, and I always clear myself, Epsom salt baths, saging, do things that that will help balance you, ground yourself, because they're around. I'm not working with them. I'm not inviting them in. There's so much biogeometry here. There's so much light on this property. They wouldn't want to be here. But again, I'm not going to say no bad spirit can show up. It's almost like egging them on. It's like, no, they don't want to be here, and just keep it at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's such a crazy topic. We're actually talking about this exact thing, because last night I put on something on Netflix and I had to turn it off because it was just scaring me. It was like this guy who murdered someone, but he said the devil told him to do it. And in the house, the whole house was shaking. They thought a UFO was landing on their roof, and the whole house was shaking. Things were falling over and everything. And the whole family is there. That one of the sons has actually murdered someone, and the whole family are there talking about it, like in separate rooms, like talking about. So it's like legit.
So is it a documentary?
It's a documentary, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is heavy.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you don't want to invite it in. And like, yeah, I mean, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I feel like, yeah, I remember reading something in the Tibetan Book of the Dead about how when you die, like a lot of deities and stuff can come to you, and actually you got to understand that you are a soul and you're not your mind still, and it can be really scary. Does that make sense?
Sure. And also what I tell people is when they die, just because you die doesn't make you enlightened.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people go, can you speak to my dead relative? And I said, sure. But just so you know, they're still the same person. Sometimes people can become enlightened, but most of the time they're just the same mom, same aunt, same uncle. And it's kind of like this. Your mom dies and you go, oh, let me talk to mom. And mom says, don't forget your sweater. And, but you think about when she was alive, she always told you to bring your sweater. And you're like, yeah, mom. But now that she's gone, you're like, oh my gosh, I always have to bring my sweater now. And it's like, same mom telling you the same thing, but it's not that she knows anymore.
On a step up. Hey, I had a dream a little while ago, because my dad passed just before I come over and did IMS4 last year. But I had a dream, and it was just after, because Spirit Gym's really opened up a lot of stuff for me. Like just in a non-thinking way, and in a like just things are happening, synchronizations and things. But I was in my dream, and I had my phone there, and Spirit told me to call my dad, and I was like, but he's dead, like I can't call him. And I started crying, and I was like sobbing, and Spirit goes, just call him. And I was like, all right. So as soon as I pressed the number, he just answered. He's like, I've been waiting for you to call. And I was like, but you're dead. And he didn't understand that he was dead. Like it was just I'm still trying to interpret. It's like,
yeah, sometimes, and that's called psychopomp work, where people are stuck in the middle world and they don't know they're dead. My dad died of a massive heart attack in 2003. Wow. And he came to me that night in a dream, and he says, Angie, I don't understand. Something's wrong. Am I dead? And I was still shocked about the news, and I didn't really want to believe my dad was dead because it was so raw and so new. So I said, no, Dad, the dog died. And he's like, I don't think so. I'm like, yeah, it was the dog. He goes, I don't think so. And he left. That was my dream. So I was like, wow. You do something, come back to you. And Yeah, it was pretty intense. But yeah, I remember him saying that, and I'm like, but I didn't want to be like, yeah, Dad, you're dead. But he was asking me, and I'm like, just couldn't get there with him.
There's such a
Wow.
depth to it, hey. There's
Oh
such a depth to
man.
it that I think well, me personally, I haven't experienced those levels yet. So I'm just like,
Uh-huh.
it really just
You're there, you've had a lot of those levels.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, just keep on trusting because the biggest thing is their mind gets in the way of what they can do. So if you tell yourself you can't, you're
yeah.
right.
You're right.
Tell yourself you can, you're also right. So you're like, I can do this. I can speak to dead. I can do this. I can do that. I can do, and you'll realize you can. We all can. It's just
Yeah,
we get in the way of
I
ourselves.
know, and we hear like you and Paul talk about it a lot. Like Paul's hopping in his ice bath the other day, and he's talking about the water spirits, and I was like, God, I wish I could feel and talk to the water spirits. And I'm like, you know, like I
You
probably
can
am.
too.
I can, you know what I mean? But it's like you
Yeah.
guys, you just tapped in on that level with shit, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And the more you work on that level, the more the spirits know you're working on that level, and the more the spirits want to talk to you.
Mm,
Because it's kind of like if you want to work with healing spirits, but you're never working on people and doing healings, then the
yeah,
healing spirit's like, well, I'm bored. I'm going to go to somebody who's actually doing the work.
yeah.
But if you're very active doing the work, they're with you because they're like, yeah, this is what I want to do too. So I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's
So-
spot on.
What is your meditative practice that you connect to the most?
Okay, well, my meditative practice has changed so much throughout the year. So, back in the day, I used to do a Kriya Yoga, and that was my ultimate favorite. I learned it from a yogi master, amazing guy. Saw him shapeshift, crazy stuff where
Oh
you're like,
wow.
what? We're sitting in front of him having a conversation, and his face shifts to a different one, and then shifts to another one, and then shifts to another one. And I
Wow.
saw 4 or 5 faces, and I was like, and when you see someone do that, it's like your eyes, you don't want to close your eyes and your eyes start to water because you're like, I don't want to miss anything what the hell's going on, right? And it was a big group of students there. And he goes, your eyes are probably burning now. Hold on. He goes like this and clears it. And you're like, the hell? He goes, did anybody see anything? And some people are like, I saw this shape. Like there was this face, a warrior with a scar on his face. And I'm like, I saw that too. And
Wow.
someone else to say, oh, I saw this Asian woman. I saw that too. And I saw this. And some people are sitting in the audience going, I didn't see anything. What are you guys talking about? And so he goes, the faces you saw are the souls that connection we had in past lives. So if you saw him in a past life, you would recognize the face. And he was showing
Wow.
several of his faces that you would recognize,
Wow.
which was really powerful guy, but it was an amazing experience. I met this guy and then he's like, oh, for $108, I'll teach you my meditation. And I'm like, okay, the guy just shapeshift in front of me. Why would you not pay $108
Yeah.
to figure out what this guy knows, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, sign me up. And it was indeed the most powerful meditation practice I've ever learned. I did that for years and years and years and years. And now with kids and everything, I don't usually sit down and do like a sedentary meditation. Sometimes I do, but not like every night like I used to. So my meditation practice now has changed. For a while, I was walking my labyrinth. I built a labyrinth on my property. And so I would just go and center myself and get messages through my labyrinth, hang out in the center, 10, 15 minutes, and then walk out. So it could be 30 minutes in, 30 minutes out. If I walk fast, 15 minutes in, 15 minutes out, depending how long I stay in the center. And now what I do every day is I milk my goats as a meditative practice.
That's cool.
And it's really amazing because people think meditation has to be, oh, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
No.
It could be waxing your surfboard. It could be woodworking, anything where you're in no mind, where you're just doing something repetitively that doesn't take, your mind to think about it. So milking goats, I go out there every morning, about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I connect to nature. I'm out there, it's fresh air, a lot of chi in the air, and I milk my goats and I just connect. And it's powerful because animals hold a high level of BG3, which is BioGeometry's healing energy. So when you pet a dog, you're actually getting healing energy. You pet a cat, they're giving you healing energy.
Mm.
So me connecting to my goats, it's healing energy. And so it's amazing connection. And sometimes in the morning I'm milking and I actually literally put my head on my goat just to connect to it even more. And my goats are so loving, they just kind of lean against my forehead and I'm just milking them. And it's just this wonderful connection to animals, to nature. I'm milking, I'm seeing birds fly by, I'm connecting to see what's coming into my field, what animals show up. And that's how I meditate every day.
Wow.
Yeah. It's beginning to be more same for me, like just everything. I'm like, why meditate like for 20 minutes a day when you can really just do it all day if you want in everything you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously,
Consciousness.
yeah, exactly. You get caught on your phone every now and then and things like that. I mean, you still got to live, but but yeah, for the
Yeah.
most part, it's yeah, you can do it with everything you do. Hey, like washing the dishes, or I don't know. I did it
Yeah.
with something yesterday. It felt so good. Felt so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the geometry stuff like? How'd you get into that, and what's that all about?
Okay, so it's a funny story. Paul did a podcast. He's always doing podcasts like you guys. And one day he does this podcast and he emails me right after it. And he's like, I did this amazing podcast with this guy named Dr. Ibrahim Kareem. It's on biogeometry. And he's emailing me and Matt Walden. Matt Walden's the head of the IMS department for Chek Institute. And
Yeah.
I'm the head of the HLC department. And he says, I really want to carry this guy's products, but he says we can't carry them unless someone has been trained at least at the foundation level. Which one of you wants to take the foundation training? And usually I'm way behind on emails. I mean, I've got so many emails, and usually even when I read them, it takes me a week or two to respond sometimes because it's just so much going on in my life. And it had just sent it, and I opened up my emails and saw it, and I saw that email, and I just like, I always feel like connect to my soul and I feel things. And it was just this rising up in me that was like a big yes. And I immediately wrote back to him and I looked at my schedule and had an opening for the time the foundation training was. And I was like, that's so weird. All my clients are on vacation that week. There's this big block of energy. I just have to move a couple of people around. I totally can do this. So I wrote to him and said, I'll do it. He's like, really? What? You? I was like, I'll do it. He's like, okay. So that's how it happened. And the word alone should have scared me because I didn't like geometry in high school. I was like, hated geometry. And so biogeometry, what the heck? But something my soul said, I'm going to take it. And I had no clue what it was all about. And when I signed up for it and started taking the classes, it was like I did it online during COVID. And it was like every single lecture was like, I was up and down. Paul was like cracking up. I was like a little kid, like high as a kite. This is so amazing, and so that's how it started. And I was like, oh, I have to take the next level. So I went into advanced training and then applied skills and now practitioner training. It's like, I'm now going to start teacher training. So I'm going to start teaching
Sick.
biogeometry. I love it.
Yes. So, but what is it in the sense of how what's taught or how do you integrate it with someone in front of you?
Okay, yeah. So biogeometry, Dr. Cream was an architect and he's 85 years old or something right now. So he's been doing this since, 50 years or so. And his whole thing is he's an Egyptian and he wanted to know how to harness the energy of the pyramids and take that healing energy and apply it to architectural design to build condos and apartments for people so they'd be in a healing vibration. That was his whole premise for starting this. And so he started visiting sacred sites all over the world, figuring out what was it that created this healing site. And he found that there was 3 energies that show up. So we refer to it as BG3. There's the higher harmonics of gold. When you see the halos around the saints, okay? Then you see the higher harmonics of ultraviolet, which is when you're like looking at the dawn and you see the sun come up. And there's that powerful time when you can gaze at the sun and there's a lot of healing energy at that spot. They found that color is there as well. So there's 3 colors: gold, ultraviolet, and then horizontal negative green. So it's a green color. There's vertical and there's a horizontal, and horizontal is the healing energy. And when those 3 energies come together, it balances out all life systems. So animals, insects, plants, everything on the planet get balanced from this harmonization. So he was able to harness this energy, and he's created things like a home kit, which is a cube you put in your house, and it balances the energy in your home. So it's got that healing sacred site feeling. So it's not a sacred site, but it has sacred site information that makes you, get that energy of healing.
Feel calm.
Yeah, so that's how it started. So it was all architecture. So how to build your house architecturally to build these energies that he discovered, how to make arcs instead of flat squares, domes instead of square, boxy square roofs.
Wow.
And so that's how it started. And through the process, he found some ancient scrolls and Egyptian scrolls that showed signatures. So these are patterns of energy, and they were related to the organ system. And that's my favorite thing. They're called biogeometry biosignatures. And so basically, to understand it is, the old Egyptians had discovered the energy, because we're all energy, and energy goes through every single organ system of your body. Okay. And so he was able to figure out the optimal way through the heart, and the optimal way through the lungs, and the optimal way through the intestines. And when we're exposed to like Wi-Fi and 5G and, all this buzz that we're exposed to, it can disrupt our energetic field. And so the body might get scrambled for a second and then forget the optimal pathway to a certain organ. So it creates a new pathway, which is like a suboptimal pathway. And now that slowly brings you towards a disease because it's not the exact way energy should flow through that organ. So when we apply the biosignatures to the body goes, oh, that's right. And it instantly recalibrates because it knows that's the right way. So you can draw the signature on your skin. I make emitters on a piece of paper with your picture, and it sends the energy to your body, and the body starts to heal. And so that's my passion, to figure out what signatures a body needs and how to heal that body.
That's cool.
That's really cool. My dad used to rave on to me when my dad's an old sort of, bit of an old school hippie Feldenkrais fanatic. And but he was always big on like domes growing up, and he goes, we should all be living in domes. If the cyclones come, it'll be fine. And he always talks about like when we shape a surfboard, he used to shape surfboards, and he'd be like, there's no straight lines in nature. There's no straight lines in nature. And he goes, it's always got a curve. There's always this. He goes, if you're an animal and you see a straight line that pops out in the sight to something that's unusual.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny how this stuff comes back to my life somehow.
Yeah, and I wondered, like, Paul taught, the heart breathing meditation that Paul teaches every time, and he's always like, was it violet, green, or gold light, like as you're breathing in that gold light, and that was just like an aha moment for me. I was like, why is it always gold or white or green? I was like, yeah.
And green is the color of the heart chakra too.
Yes.
So there's two, but green is the healing color as well, but the heart is green.
Right. Yeah.
I love to ask all practitioners this, and it interests me because we all like stories, right? We won't talk about facts and that, but stories are great. So is there a story that stands out for you in regards to your one-on-one coaching where someone was really in a deficit and needed help, and the check system or your system, whatever you were using, worked? And I know it's worked a million times over, right? But is there one that stands out for you that you can speak on?
Yeah, no, I have so many stories, and a lot of times now I use the check system, and I incorporate all my other modalities too. So that's what's nice about the check system is you don't have to just say, oh, I'm just going to be a check practitioner. Check practitioners are unique because they have other modalities. Some are massage therapists, physical therapists, shamanic practitioners. So there's all these different avenues. So you want to use all of it, and it invites all of those technologies. So I'm using all of it. Yeah, so I mean, like now I have a lot of cases that are pretty advanced cases that I'm helping because they've gone to all these doctors and they don't, I'm thinking of one client right now, and he had sent, a spinal doctor. He had knee problems. He saw a knee specialist. Then he went to all these different doctors and couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And so he finally came to me because he was like, what should I do? And so we do the basic questionnaires that you know about, and figure out where the organs are having the most challenging. Go start there, do a physical assessment on the guy, see what's actually happening, because he had actually all these problems with his neck, and then it was his hip, and then his knee and his hamstring. And so you start asking questions, and it's usually when people have a lot of complications, it's not just one thing. It's like, well, he had a injury with his hamstring, so we had to correct the hamstring. And then, oh, he's having problems with his back. Well, it's actually coming from his gut. So we had to check his gut. Turns out he had parasites. Nobody addressed parasites with him. Put him on a parasite cleanse. Did some Atlas work. Sent him to a Nuka chiropractor. So there was all these different things that took for the healing to start taking place because it wasn't just one thing. It's like that's why you couldn't just adjust your back and think you're fine, or go see a chiropractor and think it's okay, or see a nutritionist and get better because there was parasites there, or work on manual therapy on the knee. There was so many different assets. So we had to work on scar tissue from the accident. We had to work on the gut. We had to retract the neck and then recondition the neck and the muscles to strengthen it so it held the adjustment. So that was just like one that I'm working with now that's getting better. I have lots of stories though, and it's usually many things. Parasites are a big one. Most people have parasites. They say 90 to 95% of the population has a parasite. It's just whether it's an infestation. So when people are sick, their immune system is suppressed. Then you see this problem with the parasites, and so most people have never done a parasite cleanse. And it's kind of funny. Like if you have a dog. It's like when you take them to the vet, what do? They give them a parasite cleanse. They give them a pill, they chew it up. It's a little chewy thing. They kind of go, ooh, all day for a day, and then they feel better. It's like, But they don't do that to humans. And it's like there's so many parasites. Parasites are linked to cancers. Fungal infections are linked to cancers. And so there's all this correlation, but we don't do that. Why? Because there's no money involved. I mean, you get a little $2 pill to take care of your problem and your problems go away. But now, it's like go to this back doctor and the gut doctor and all these issues, and people don't heal.
Yeah.
So,
and it's the testing. Hey, I remember Walden was talking about he had a client that had 2 meters of worms a day coming out of her, and she passed the test. And then they said, we can't help you, even though she handed them the worm that came out of her.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like he had some that they literally took the worms, put them in a jar, said, take it to the lab to get tested. There was a worm in the jar. They sent it to the lab, and the lab comes back and says, no parasite found.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you not see the big worm in there? And so, when in doubt, I usually test, when they're healthy enough, I do a parasite cleanse, and there's usually always worms. I've had some advanced recently, I don't know what it is, but there's been 3 guys come to me, and they all have had serious parasite infections where we had to do several protocols to get rid of the worms, and just buckets of worms coming out of them.
Yeah. It's great. I had a girl message the other day, and she did our one, and she got Bell's palsy on half of her face, not from the cleanse, before the cleanse, right? Yeah. So she firstly put on a lot of weight for postnatal, and just felt like she couldn't jump on top of her health. Her thyroid issues came on, and then she got Bell's palsy, and she was getting like nosebleeds and stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then she did the cleanse, and she didn't even see any parasites, but she goes, it got rid of all her symptoms. She goes, my it's all back to normal now, and she lost 15 kilos.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
I have some. Oh yeah, I've had some crazy stories with parasites. I almost want to write a book on that. Yeah. I had a girl. This was earlier in my days, but I had a machine that tested. It was called a biomeridian machine, and it sent like ohms, 50 ohms through your meridian points on your fingers and your toes, and go to your organ system, and it would test your organs to see how healthy they were. 50 means they're normal. 60, 70, 80 means they're stressed. And then if it's under 50, that means that they're now dying because they don't have enough energy. So you can figure out what's going on in their body. And then you can also use this machine to test for parasites. And I loved it because it's non-invasive. So if you suspect liver parasites, you test the liver for parasites, and it just sends a bunch of messages. So basically it sends a signal for a parasite, keeps on sending signals. And if your body's never seen it, the signal just passes through. But if your body has it, it sends a rebound because like, I know what that is. And it kind of pushes back. Your immune system quickly responds.
Wow.
And then it'll pop up. It says you have this worm. Whoa, and I was able to detect all sorts of parasites. And there was one story that same kind of like your client where she was training with me to go into the Peace Corps. And she said, Angie, get me in really good shape because I'm going to the Peace Corps. I'm like, all right, cool. So I was just doing exercise with her. And a year later, she comes back. And she's like, I need to see you. I say, oh, cool. She's like, no, you don't get it. I'm not doing well. She goes, I gained a bunch of weight. I don't feel well. The doctors think I have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. They want to take out my ovaries. Mm-hmm. And my mom says, do it because I have sisters that can have babies for me. She goes, I don't think I want to do that. Can you test me? She goes, I think I have parasites. And I said, you probably do. You were, in San Salvador. So I said, come on in. So we put her on this biomeridian, and sure enough, she had these parasites that was found in poor sanitation. Mm-hmm. And it says this parasite's commonly found around livestock when you live with livestock. And I said, did you live with livestock? She goes, oh yeah, we were in huts with chickens and pigs and goats. And, we were for sure. And so I said, you definitely have these parasites. She had one parasite at first. And the problem is when you have one parasite, it lowers your immune system. So she got several over the course of treating her. But she showed up. And she was 100 pounds heavier. Okay. So you can't put 100 pounds of fat here, right? Yeah, this is like just water weight. It was like she was just watery, like just water. Yeah. Like you could take a pin and pop her, right? It was just insane. So I said, oh my gosh, this is inflammation. And so when we found out it was a parasite, I said, we need to do this protocol. Now, the thing about parasites is when you start to kill them, they actually will talk to you. They will be the voice in your head, and they'll start saying, take that supplement. You don't need it. And so I tell my clients all the time, when you feel that way, don't stop. That's when they're going to start dying. Yeah. And sure enough, after a couple of weeks, she started feeling like I should just stop this. I'm like, don't. And then she said she had this nightmare. This monster was chasing her. And the very next day she passed this stool, and it had like worms around it. And then they just all started coming out because she got another worm. There was these big giant ones, like they were like the size of my arm with tentacles.
Whoa.
And then when she took pictures, my clients send me photos of this stuff, which was really great. But it was all like gelatinous because her immune system had, attacked it. So it was like had all weird colors to it, like baby blue and baby like soft pink. Weird, like it was just her body was trying to attack this creature that came out of her. But long story short, we had to cleanse her several times. It was kind of a funny story. She passed worms, then she was home. She gets a puppy. She goes to the dog park. She gets more worms. She becomes a kindergarten teacher. She gets more worms. So after a year, she finally got parasite free. And the beautiful part of the story is she now has 3 kids of her own. So she didn't have to remove her ovaries or anything like that.
That's amazing.
Fuck, yeah.
What we find I'm not sure what it's like over there, but in Australia, a lot of people have liver flukes. So it seems to be the most common, like more than other types of worms. Like there's little slug looking things, and they just seem to be like like I got liver flukes. I went to Japan, had a sushi in Tokyo, and come back, and I was just like, I should probably take some herbs. Like I didn't, I felt run down, but I didn't actually think I had anything. And then I took the herbs, and 3 hours later, less than 3 hours, probably 2 hours later, they came out of me. And I was like, whoa, rattled me. And I pulled tweezers out of it and looked at it. And that same, like it was a jelly. There was this jelly. I was like, what the hell is that? Because I was like, and I was trying to think, what have I eaten, And then I pulled open this jelly, and there was like a rice seed in there, like a sesame seed, which was some sort of egg. And then after that, then it was about hundreds of them come out. Like hundreds of the eggs come out, not so much. I probably had another 40 or 50 liver flukes come out, but that's crazy. Wow. That's all happened within a couple of weeks, And
that's great.
And I felt like a little pain in my stomach. I knew something was off, But at the same time, I was thinking, man, I'm blessed I even know about this, because this could have been a 2-3 year thing. Knowing me, I wouldn't have went to the doctor for a long time, and just thought it was just this subtle inflammation that just riddles through your body that shows up as some sort of genetic weakness later on.
Yeah. Antibiotics. I had antibiotics recently, and that's like really fucked with my gut. Like it's months later, I'm still doing Repel. I'm on a cleanse right now. And yeah, it's just interesting how just anti-life just comes in and just bombards your gut. And I still feel inflammation in there, and I'm on a cleanse right now. And I'm just like, this is so...
Have you been taking probiotics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just natural. And I got Bioptimize as P3, I think it is.
3OM.
Yeah, that's
3OM.
3OM.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm on that as well.
True. What's that good for?
It's a probiotic.
Oh, yeah.
The probiotic, it's amazing. And you can't overdose on the stuff. Like if you feel like you got food poisoning, you can like take 10 capsules at one time.
Wow.
It'll knock it out just like that. Like when my kids say I have a stomach ache, I just open up the capsules, like 2 or 3 of them, and put them in some like juice. They drink it down, tummy ache gone. Amazing.
Oh,
so good.
Actually, that's what we've got to touch on. Sorry. Because of like raising your children, right?
Yeah.
These kids it's a couple of unique kids. I've never even met them, but I've heard from afar, their legacy's already made it all the way to Australia.
Zoe and Mana.
Yeah. So how's that been? Has that been one of the biggest shifts ever for your life? And is that does it, cause okay, this is how I can just I got a puppy, right? And I know it's different, right? But at that start stage, I was like thinking about the programming of them. So I was like, all right, I got to make sure I don't do this and don't let it go on the couch. And it became a bit like of a stressor. Now it's sort of flowed a bit easier. Now I understand it. But how do you guys direct your intention around raising the children? And I know they go to a Steiner school and whatnot. Like, how's that whole experience been for you? And is it most of your day?
Yeah. So my life changed 180 degrees with kids. Like I had no idea. Like no one really prepares you for kids. Like I had a pug before kids, and I used to call her my dogter because she was a girl. And so I was like, she was like, I dressed her and everything. I was one of those, pug lovers. And she went everywhere with me. I had her serviced so she could be a service dog, so she could go everywhere, grocery stores, restaurants, everywhere. My dog, she was like famous. People knew her. It was like Maggie. They may not know my name, but they knew Maggie's name.
Yeah.
She was like my whole world. But kids are a whole different level. It's like Dogs are pretty independent. They need your company, but they're not 100% needing your company. Like kids, young kids, like my kids' ages, 5 and 8, they're pretty much full on. It's like hands on 24 hours a day. And especially Zoe, if she's not feeling well, she's up all night, mommy, mommy, and so you're up. It's like you can't just punch the clock and say I'm done parenting today.
Yeah.
It's like you're never done, and it's like it was a big change for me. But it's amazing to see the world in their eyes. Like you see life in a whole new way because they're different souls, different paths, and stuff like Mana is so into cars and helicopters and things that I never was interested in. But now I'm taking interest because he's interested, and I'm like, I didn't know what this stuff was, and he would tell me about all the pieces of the equipment and stuff that goes on in and to make a helicopter or whatever. So it's amazing. But yeah, they go to a Steiner school. They're also homeschooled. So the Steiner school is called, there's a term for it, enrichment center. So it's actually not considered a school. It's called an enrichment center. And it's not full time. They don't go 5 days a week. So I have time to homeschool them as well. They can go as little as 1 day a week to the enrichment center. They can go up to 4 days, but there's no more than 4 days at the enrichment center. So you can't go 5 days. And what I love about it is it's all Rudolf Steiner's teaching. And so they're learning how it's amazing. Like if you have kids, you want to send them to a Steiner school because they understand that it's not just a body, there's a soul in there, and they're cultivating the soul. And when your kids are in kindergarten and they are getting them prepped for first grade, they actually have tests to do to make sure your kid is first grade ready. And that requires their soul to be fully in their body. So they do and it was amazing. I got to watch when Mana did his testing, all the different tests they do to see if he's fully in his body. So the soul comes in.
Whoa.
It slowly gets into the fingers and the toes. And if you're not fully into your body, the energy it takes for the soul to grow fully into itself is the energy it takes to learn. So now the body's compromised, the soul's compromised because wait, I don't have the energy to do well in school and for my soul to fully connect. So obviously the soul is going to take precedence, and then learning is hard. So a kid goes, oh, I'm not good at school. I must be stupid. This isn't for me. And it can screw up a child for the rest of their life because now they think they're dumb or they're not good at school. Well, it's just because they were pushed into it too soon. It's like, so for Mana, I thought, every kid goes to first grade at 6. And when they did his testing, they said he's not ready. He needs to come next year. So Mana didn't go to first grade till he was 7. And the reason why they said he wasn't fully in his hands. So if you said, Mana, here, draw me a picture, he would hold the pen like this with his fist instead of with his fingers. And that means he didn't have dexterity yet. He wasn't fully in his fingers.
Wow, that's so smart.
Several tests that showed that. And so I trusted them. I said, there's no rush to learn. We're always in a race, race to finish, race. Like, if it's going to help him, let's wait a year. And that was the best decision ever because in a year, you could see him shift, calm down, centered, could sit in a chair. At 5, 6 years old, he was wiggling, and he was just like, and there was no way he was going to sit down and study and learn. And now he has the ability to sit still and take in information, and he's doing really well in school. So I changed his whole outlook of school because he was ready.
How do they, from a social perspective, how are they with other kids at the school? Generally, parents obviously on the same level, or even like social outside of school. Like, do they have their activities and whatnot?
Yeah, so the most people who go to Steiner schools are of our same consciousness, of same values, which is really lovely. There's occasionally someone who's just found out about the school and threw them in without that, but they tend to become more aware as they're present with other parents.
Yeah.
But I like it. The teachers are very present. They have high values. In fact, what I loved about it is everything happens for a reason. So when I was going to send Mana to first grade, they said, no, wait another year. I said, okay. Well, it turns out the first grade teacher, when we meet her on Parent Teacher Day before he starts school, she says to us at the meeting, she goes, by the way, Paul, she goes, I've taken HLC 1 with you. And she goes, she was studying Paul's work. And she says, you don't know this, but I've actually done this. And we're like, what? So she has appreciation for Paul's work because she took several courses. And so now it's his school. And in Steiner school, the first grade teacher goes with him to second grade. She's his second grade teacher, third, fourth, and the teacher goes with his kids the entire 8 years. And then they go back into first grade. And so the teachers, so it's a beautiful thing. So it's not just his first grade teacher, it's now his second grade teacher, which will be his third grade teacher, which is powerful. So
that is
powerful.
Yeah.
It's like
So he would
tribe and family, like growing together. Hey.
the same student, same teacher. Yeah, it's amazing. So that
Yeah.
was
Cool.
Because I've never
yeah.
like I think I'm not like you know maybe in a few years I'll have a kid when I meet the woman, right? But I've thought about this because school is such a influence on a child's life because they're there for most of the day for you know for when I was in school anyway, and I've just seen kids, their whole path has changed because they hung out with a couple of other kids that they were like a normal kid, and then these other kids sort of had a different upbringing, more criminal style, and then they just go down that path just from the school choice. And you can have obviously the parents are going to have a big influence at home, but especially if they're both at work, you know, say that both parents are working, and then the child has to go to a local public school here, getting influenced by all these different teachers, all this different consciousness. I look back on some of the teachers and I was like, God, I'm glad I didn't have that person for 8 years because I'd be cooked. I remember day 2, I was talking to this kid. I still remember this. I forgot this until now, really. And my teacher comes to my table and just slams his hands on my desk and just screams at me, man. Like I was like, holy shit. Like he set the standard, you know? But he ended up teaching me guitar actually, so it all worked out.
What about, tell Angie about what was the drawing that you got made
this
to
is
feel
the same
dumb?
teacher actually, yeah. So I don't really draw, right? No, maybe it's from this, and I feel like it's, you know how we're all born with things? Drawing definitely wasn't what I was born with, you know? Some people see the world in shades, I see it in straight lines. But I appreciate art. I really like value someone that can do that well because I can't. And but I remember I walked in, it was year 2, and then he must have been checking like how we were going throughout the year, and he was doing his little tests, and went into the back room and he was like, all right, draw me a pair of shoes. And in my head I was like, well, he wanted to see a pair, draw me a pair of something, right? But he just said shoes. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to draw shoes. Like, do I do a circle and laces and all this sort of stuff? He's like, come on, just draw a pair, draw a pair. And then I was like, I can't just draw 2 dots. Like, I know what a pair is. And then he's like, oh, I just got all angry and made me go backside. And I remember I sat down thinking, oh, I know what a pair was, but I can't draw. And then, but I remember that, you know, from when I was 7 or 6, turning 7. So, and I'm 32 now. So that's one teacher's influence. And he has no idea, and he was actually a good guy outside of that. He had his own anger issues, you know, but in the end he ended up teaching me guitar because he was the guitar teacher in school. So, and I still play today a little bit, so really
It evened out.
He got me into creativity in some sense, but just definitely not with a pencil. I'm the same as I am drawing now as I was when I was in preschool, I reckon.
Oh, that's so good. So what's coming up for you? What's the latest thing? So obviously you're going to start teaching biogeometry. Is that where all your energy is going at the moment?
I'm focusing on that because I really enjoy that. But yeah, that and my private coaching, I really spend a lot of time in that. I have in my coaching practice, I only take 6 clients at a time, so I only see 6 clients a week.
Yeah.
But I do take one-offs of just like biogeometry readings or soul retrievals.
Cool.
But I never see more than 2 appointments a day. And just because the work I do isn't just like a 9-to-5 job, it takes a lot of faculty. So I never work more than 4 hours with people in a day. It's just too much. So my energy is into my property as well. I've got my goats. I've got 7 Nigerian dwarf goats, and I believe my 4 girls are pregnant. So we're gonna have more goats next year.
No way, yes.
So I'll probably be selling some, but I wanted them all to have milk because I'm really passionate about making things with their milk. So I make cheese, and I'm quite a good. If you're here in town again, I'll make you cheese. Because
we love cheese.
it's all raw. I have a roasted garlic, roasted onion, so amazing. I do a grill with fresh onion. I even make sweet ones with like raisins or cranberries, and then I use our honey from our bees and some cinnamon and mix it with the goat cheese.
So good. I'm on a cleanse right now, so that's cute.
Yeah, it's so good. And so I thought, well, more milk. And so I'm also taking courses on what to do with milk. So I've got all the stuff to make goat soap. So goat milk soap. super good for the body.
Yeah.
It's kind of like olive oil and milk, and you emulsify it, and so I'm learning that process. So it shouldn't be very hard to do. I just haven't found the time to sit still and do it because the lye is very, caustic, and you have to wear goggles, and I want to make sure I like put everything around my kitchen so it doesn't like splatter and ruin my granite or something, so I haven't figured out the time to do that, but I want to make my soaps, and then I want to just learn a bunch of different things. They make so many things with milk, and so that's kind of my hobby right now.
That's awesome.
What?
And then,
oh, sorry, go on.
oh, I was going to say more of that. We might expand the farm where Paul wants, because Paul's so sensitive to meat, and if they feed it grain of any kind, he has a reaction. So that's how we got started with chickens. So we have chickens so he can eat their eggs. Now we might get meat chickens because they're different than egg producing chickens. They all produce eggs, but meat chickens, and then we're going to get maybe some meat pigs. And so
Cool.
a whole new level of farming here, but
You got the
connecting
land, hey.
yeah, we do. So there's space, and there's, so it's, and I enjoy it. And, it would be hard to, I probably won't do the slaughtering. I'll probably hire someone. There's a lot of people in town who do that work. But raise it, give it the best life ever, so, we produce a really.
Absolutely.
You know, it would be so good. What I'd love to see, I feel like so many people would love to see, is like your guys' life behind the scenes, because we see the videos where he sits down in the reels and we're talking about things, the professional ones, but like it's all those little candid moments, it's like, because if you think about people that you look up to, you would love to see that too. You know what I mean? Like you love to see like you making the goat, the milk and the goat, you making the cheese, like the cinnamon, these tiny little 30-second clips are just like on a house like you guys have. It's like, it'd be so cool.
We have talked about that. I'm like, Paul, we just need to push the easy button. If we just install cameras all over our house and just charge a monthly fee for people just to have access to our webcams.
Yeah.
Would love that, because we do live very differently, but we live very harmoniously. And, you would see how busy we are. Like people have no idea how busy the household is. Like people think, oh yeah, they're busy. Like even Kirsty Pratt, she was with us for a while, and she's like, okay, you guys said you were busy. I can now appreciate it because I didn't realize what busy meant until I was here. Like we're just got so much going on. So it would be amazing because it would be like the behind the scenes of all the things that happen, all the functions we have, what it takes to run workshops. Like people think, oh, it's easy to run a workshop. But then they do it and they're like, holy cow, it's like the food and the bathrooms and all the, hospitality, everything that has to go on behind the scenes to make an event besides the event it's huge. And when an event's done here, it's all organic food, it's all homemade cooking. We have a chef, it's a full on production.
Yeah.
So it
like
would
that,
be fun to,
like seeing that,
Yeah.
or just you just need a full-time videographer that just films for 2 days and edits for 3,
yeah, right.
It's,
because
it'd just be so cool, because that's what, like, I'm currently going through so anyway, when I was younger, I got caught with MDMA when I was 21, and that's what I went to prison for. So I'm not allowed in the US. And
oh wow.
But I've went to Sydney recently and applied for the visa, and I've gone through all this process, so I should get approved soon. And I've never been to the US, so I really want to see it. And Jake goes all the time, and my sister loves it, and it's just the movies, I want to see some movie stuff. And and so, but like the dream, the manifestation of it is we like going over there, and this, because we got a videographer that travels with us too, and just vlogs stuff, and just like seeing the way you guys do it and like how we created this from the check work, and then how somehow from me watching a video in my lounge room 6 years ago, Paul talking about dairy and grains. Now I'm sitting in his house looking across from him, because Jake did the podcast with him because I couldn't go over there, obviously. So I would love to sit down with him and do a podcast with Jake and us, and just it'll just be a trip, And you know what? I know somehow it'll happen. Somehow it'll happen, and it'll just let it all happen to us. So, but that's the dream. So I'd love to film some stuff while we're there and to see how you guys do that. It'd be amazing content, and personally, I'd love to just witness it, but I know so many of our followers would love to see that too, because there's a lot of people have gotten to check from just watching in Australia, from watching our 2 journey, because there wasn't heaps of people sort of publicly doing it that when it started. Like there was no one to really watch But now there's a lot more content out there, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we host the venue here. So they did IMS 1 here, and Walden's flying out here doing IMS 4, and Susie's going to come out.
Yeah, Angie might come out and do HLC 3.
Yeah, and just creating a hub.
I know they've been asking me for a while now to go out to Australia, and I was just been waiting for things to settle because it's all crazy
for sure.
there. I'm like, I don't want to get stuck. But
dude, I love America now. Like, it's cool that Robert Kennedy and stuff are kind of it seems like there's a massive shift over there, and it's really. I spent some time in Texas recently, and I was like, man, Australia is just like, they just need to loosen up, like the government here. Don't want to get into politics and stuff, but like, it is just really, Australia is just like, especially with the whole COVID thing, I was just like, man, we live in like a cultish society here. Like, to step outside the box, like.
The history of Australia, you guys were like supposed to be like the hoodlums and the people who struck out and said, I'm going to do something different. And now you see them like all becoming passive. It's like, what the hell? Rise up. Where are the roots? Get strong. Absolutely. And that's, I'm hoping there's a carry-on effect from what's happening in America right now. I'd love to see a shake up here in Australia.
Yeah, I reckon there will be.
Yeah. There needs it. It's like, it's just, there's no backbone here anymore. Yeah. But anyway.
Anyway, Angie, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Really. Oh, you're welcome, guys. Yeah. It's fun, good conversation.
Yeah, I love it. And if because I was gonna see if I could book in the future one time when you to do some soul retrieval stuff with you. And just for people listening, if they did want to reach out and they feel really called to work with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, so they can email me directly. I would say let's use my Chek Institute one because my other one's getting bombarded right now. So it's Angie at chekinstitute.com.
Okay.
So it's CEK. Don't put the extra C in there. CEK-institute.com. Angie at chekinstitute.com. It's super easy. You just send me an email. If for some reason I don't respond, send me another email because sometimes it takes me 2 emails to get it through because I have to hire someone. I think I've just decided it's just emails.
Definitely.
And it's. I would laugh if I showed you my phone. It says 120,000 emails right now. I'm like,
oh my God.
Can't keep up.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot. And so someone just emailed me on Instagram the other day because they found me on Instagram. And I don't go on Instagram very often. So if you email me there, it could take a month. Yeah. But she did like last month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just can't keep up with all the social media and all the emails. And so she's like, this is the 3rd time. Can I please see you? I'm like, yes.
Got it.
Sometimes you have to be persistent to get in my schedule, but you will.
Cool.
And I usually fill it fast. So like I'm full for a while. It usually is about 6 weeks before someone can get in the cancellation.
Cool.
That's beautiful.
That's
awesome.
That would be fun, Jake. Yeah, that'd be great to see what's there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I really. Yeah, because I've been doing some like big soul connection lately, and I've had some interesting stuff come up. I'm like, I think there's some trauma there that is blocking some stuff is blocking my like clear soul connection. So, and then I heard, listened to your soul retrieval podcast with Paul, or soul resonance one, I think it was. But I listened to it. I'm only halfway through it, and I was like, oh, I've definitely one day I've got to do this. So I'll send you 3 emails. Yours will probably come in sooner. It's people who've just newly emailed me. Sometimes it goes to junk mail or gets pushed down. But That's cool. I'm glad you're busy. I'm glad everything's going awesome for you guys. It's sick. And when I was there, I really got to see how hard you guys work, and really appreciate what you are doing for all of us, especially out here. Like, we've built a massive business around it, so we're just fucking so grateful. And
it's crazy.
It's
crazy.
Much
it's like
love
you're living
all.
the dream.
That's awesome. That's great to hear because his work is so amazing, and that's why I teach it. Because when I learned it, I'm like, I want to teach this because this is this is the real deal, man. And so it changes lives. And that's why I still do it. So, because sometimes I'm like, okay, another class, but it's life-changing.
Yep.
It's priceless. What happens to students, how they transform from the work of what Paul shares and what when I share it to them, it's like, you can see their heads just go, oh my gosh, it's like their lives will forever be changed. So that's why I still do it. And I will probably always do it.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Us too.
Yeah. And the next time we'll get some details about you and Paul. It'd be classic to get the behind the scenes little like goss.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually volume 4 of my books. Talks about Paul and all the behind the scenes because people always want to know and the curiosity. our relationship. So a lot of that, and then and teaching for him, all that stuff is shared in that volume. So all the fun stuff that happens on the road and stuff, and what happens, it's like being a performer, stuff happens and you have to show up and be like, ta-da!
Yeah, for sure.
I have no luggage. The body's
I'm perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff.
I love it. And so your book will be out in the next couple years, kind of thing.
I hope so. I keep on whittling away, so it's just one of those things. But like I said, I'm so passionate about it. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, there's
I'm
no
just,
rush.
Yeah.
And now that I brought it into 4 volumes, it's a more tangible because now I can work on the first one and say, let's just get this one out.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking it'd be really fun, just like Star Wars, put the second one out because that one's on death and dying because everybody wants to know about that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the volume 1 because volume 1's my younger years.
Cool.
So it might be fun to put volume 2 out first.
Yeah.
And then show one
That's
came
cool.
from.
That sounds cool.
That's
Yeah.
different. Yeah. Well, when it does come out, definitely we'll help promote it. So shoot us an email.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that'd be fantastic.
That'd be great.
For sure.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you so much. Grateful for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, guys. So
Lots-
much fun. This is
yeah.
pleasure.
Lots of love to you all.
Bye.
Lots of love to you guys. Take care.
Bye.